Hello, thank you for being with us. As you can see, we are in a studio in Paris, but which looks like a bit like Les Arts. And it's nice also that we have a panel with real people with us. Three with us, one on Zoom. So I really want to thank them for being with us. I really want to thank also Alexandra, who is managing director from European Producers Club, for organizing this panel with us. I think it's the first time we're doing panels together. A panel on distribution, while most of theater are still closed in Europe, seems to be a strange idea, but in Les Arts we like to look ahead, and I think it's a really interesting topic. So I let Alexandra introduce you our participants to the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for hosting us this morning in Les Arcs, outside Les Arcs. And thank you for my dear panelists who are going to speak about a very important topic today, which is the crisis an opportunity for European films. Before, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Alexandra Lebret from the European Producers Club, which is an organization gathering more than 130 producers coming from 29 European countries, plus Canada. And what we learned from the crisis first was, as Jeremy said, to look ahead. We need to understand what are the consequences of this crisis and how we can shape the future in order to build a better industry for us, European producers, distributors, exhibitors. The topic we choose this morning is the distribution. That's true that it's quite rare to speak about opportunities when all the theaters, almost all of the theaters in Europe are closed. But I think we can learn about what happened just after the first lockdown in Europe, which happened to be in March and ended up before the summer. I've discussed with many distributors and producers, and they told me that sometimes their film performed better than they expected in certain markets. And actually, that's exactly what reveals the CNC study that was released these past weeks, analyzing the results of the audience in theaters. The major decrease was due to the lack of American films, and some national and European films took advantage of the fact that there was space into theaters. And they were better released, with more copies, with more theaters available, but also for a longer exposition of the film in theaters. More than 2 weeks, that is usually done. So my first question will be, it's not my first question, because I will ask our panelists their views on the short, mid and long term on this current situation. How do they see the market? How do they see the fact that US films are not there? Is this an opportunity to take for European and national films? And how do you see the market in the future if the US films are not coming back? We all know that we need US films to bring the audience back. So how will you manage to have the audience, and in particular the young audience, back to watch your film? To discuss this, I have this morning with us Chazelle from Jour de Fête, who is a French distributor, distributing national and European films. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I have Nathanaël Karmitz, who is an exhibitor in France and Spain, a producer, a sales agent, and
many more things.
I know that you're opening soon an hotel, a cinema hotel, which is a new experience for the audience. And we have on Zoom as well Andrea Occhipinti, a distributor, exhibitor, producer what I'm missing something else, maybe.
Many more.
Many more.
For us as well, for foreign sale as well.
Foreign sales as well. So thank you for being here. Sarah, maybe you can start about speaking about your experience about the first lockdown and what happens to you.
Okay, yeah, thanks a lot for inviting me, Alexandra. I'm very happy to be in Les Arcs. We have two experiences actually. My company, which I set up with Etienne Delanier 15 years ago, is called Jour de Fête as a distributor, and we also have a sales agency arm with the company, the Party Film Sales. So on the distribution front, we have had several experiences with the lockdowns. We had released a film called A Son, Un Fils by Mehdi Bassaoui just before the first lockdown on the 10th of March. And the film started very well. We had over 20,000 admissions within the first few days, and the film had a great career promise to it. But unfortunately, we had to stop, and we started again releasing the film on the 22nd of June when the cinemas reopened in France. And it was tough because the competition was much bigger. There were 25 films released that week. Everybody, of course, wanted to get back the figures that we couldn't get during the lockdown period, and we ended up with a score of 50,000 admissions when the film could have scored probably over 200,000 admissions. So that was this experience was a little disturbing for us, as it could have been for lots of other distributors with other films. Then we had during the second period a good experience with a film called Un pays qui se tient sage, a documentary by David Dufresne, which performed very well, which was very present in the MK2 cinemas, and the film again could have done much better if we had a longer period to present it. It's like many documentaries. We had organized lots of Q&As around the films, and we had some more planned. Maybe 50 other Q&As could not take place, and I think the most difficult thing is the stop and go sessions we had when we prepare a lot of things for the releases, and I'm sure Andrea can share this view, and then suddenly you are just cut in your and you just can't perform the way you should. So
were you supported by the state, by the CNC, to release films and to face that lockdown period and stop and go? What was the measures, and were they efficient for you?
Well, yeah, I think that the CNC is very supportive, and they understand, and the Ministry of Culture also understands the problematic we all have. But I think it's the most difficult is really to have to stop and start again. And of course we can have some support, like financial support. I think the most striking example in our specific case is a film called Slalom by Charlène Favier, a first film, which we initially should have released on the 4th of November. We had prepared everything, the communication campaign, 150 prints were programmed, scheduled, and then a few days before we heard that we couldn't release it. And so we waited, we put everything back, and then on the 15th of December we had decided that we would release it just after the reopening. And again, the reopening didn't happen, so it's two times we had to invest in the communication on the film and the programming, and we get support. I think we will get support for all the financial loss that we're incurring, which is obviously very high, and it's the case for lots of distributors, I'm sure, everywhere in Europe. But it's also for the teams, it's very difficult to to remain motivated and think that you have to come back another time for the same films. So.
Andrea, what is your experience in the matter? Sarah mentioned the lack of coordination between distributors and the stop and go. But I know that in Italy there were some support from the national states in order to help you to release national films. What is your experience if you for the release that you have done in the fall, but for the next one that you are scheduling after this lockdown now?
For the future, you mean?
For the near future.
First of all, during the cinema were closed from March to half of June, but actually during the summer there were very, very little releases. The real releases started at the end of August, and then obviously with September, where there were quite a few Italian films that were opened at the festival. We had a very strong support from the state, slow but good, because we had on Italian films 80% of the P&A for the period of September and October. We were open September and we closed on October 26th. And for Italian films. And for foreign films, we had 25 millions for all distributors. For those distributors that released films in theater and not for those who send the films directly to platforms. So there was like a premium for those who dared to make the effort and risk to put foreign films, American films, European films, for August, September, and October. And there was a support on both P&A and on the supposed missed box office. This is something that will be there again for Italian films when the theater will open. We don't know exactly in which percentage, but obviously what we know that will be a lack of American films. We don't know if we will open in April. The rumors now are that after Easter, probably we will reopen. So there will be kind of strong tax credit on the P&A at the beginning, probably the first 2 months, and then kind of decreasing. But that's still to be set. But for as far the results were, except some American films like Tenet, like After, like Onward, that did probably, I don't know, 40%, 50% of what they would have done. The rest were really the results were really very poor. All the Italian films that were not really big films. All the big films had been postponed. And many of those have gone directly on platforms.
And how do we all know that there will be a lack of US films for the next reopening of theaters. I see that as an opportunity, because it's not because I'm positive, it's because there is space and we need to occupy the theaters. What is your view on that, Andrea? And then,
listen, I don't know if there will be a lack of films. I think depends very much also from the flexibility there will be on windows. What I hope and what I think we should do is we should remodel and reschedule windows. There should be more flexibility because not all the films are alike. The films are very different from one another. And I think we need a model that is adapt to the potential that each film has on the theatrical market. I say that because I think that some smaller films need more flexibility. They need kind of short window, and then they need an exploitation on another platform, and so you can use the P&A and the promotion you have done for the theater, and then capitalize it on if you then are exploiting the film on a platform. So to come to your question. If there will be a flexible windows, I think there will be more films. If the window will be rigid and will be long, probably many, both Americans or independent distributors, decide to send those films directly to platforms, especially medium films, okay? So this is what I think will happen.
Yes.
And answering to your question, obviously, what I also hope is that in Italy specifically, we have a very short life for films in the theaters. I hope that there will be kind of longer exploitation, so that the films are maybe less, but can do more, can be better exploited. There is not this kind of new every week new films that send away the previous one. I think there was in the old market something unhealthy, because there were all these theatrical, technical theatrical releases, or films that were on the market just because the distributor had an output deal with a pay TV. So some distributors were paying to have the films in the theaters, were paying promotion because, and the theater were making more money from the promotion than from the real box office. And this was something very unhealthy, because you had films that didn't make money in the theater, occupying space, and while films that could have had a chance were sent away because there was a new film coming out, even if it didn't deserve it.
I'm super happy of what you are saying, because I always believe that we are not producing too many films, we are distributing too many films in the same way. Not all the films should be on theaters. That's exactly what you are mentioning. And you are mentioning that for US bad films or medium-sized films, which I'm super happy with, because I'm defending European films, as you know. So I do agree. There is a lot maybe to think about windowing, even if it's different in each country. Each country has its own rules, either regulated or on a professional agreement basis. And but also in what do we ask as films? What are the conditions to be released? What is linked to the release? Nathanaël, you are also an exhibitor. You are in one of the, you have theaters in Spain where the theaters are still open, one of the only country in Europe, and which is a very US market dependent. And you have also theaters in France, which theaters in particular that are specialized in art house films, which are not dependent on US films. What is your vision in that future, in the fact that US film may not come back, and how can we seize that an opportunity for European and national films?
Well, first, hello and thank you for having me. A few thoughts before. First, what we see is that we are European, and we have a lot of difference from territories to territories. We're speaking about Italy and France that are very much supported by the state and very well funded by the state. So we have worries on many things, but not economic ones, still on a short term.
In the short term.
It's not the same thing in all European countries. And on this I'm really thinking about all our colleagues that doesn't have this support, because it's a big worry in those times. And for example, when I think of Spain, the difference of the support for exhibitors or distributors and for all the sector regarding the support is 1 to 10. So there's a real, I think, a worry on this. Secondly, I'm not sure that the crisis and what we've seen into this in-between period between two confinements, is to say that there's not a crisis for cinema. There's right now a crisis for American cinema. There's a crisis for them because they are closed, and because they are closed, someone in LA decide that they will stop the release, that they have a new platform, and because they have a telecom shareholder, they will put their money and movies in a different way, and this has an impact on the world, and at least in Europe. Me, for example, my analysis is not that European movies have better chance or perform better, etc. It's more that the absence of American cinema correspond to the lack of share, market share in each market, in each cinema, depending on their dependence on the US movies. France is less dependent, and in this in-between period, if you look at just in between two confinements, we had a 50% loss, which is the market share of the US cinema. In a art house cinema, it was a 30% loss. In a multiplex, it was a 70% loss. So it was exactly the market share of the American cinema that was missing. Will they come back? For sure. We are a 50 billion business worldwide. There are American problems that impact the world, but it's not going directly to platform is a momentum. Not all movies in the same way will come back, but movies will come back in the cinema. But the question is, as we had the debate in many European countries, where we've discovered with this crisis that we were unable to have masks or to have industry to do those masks. We can ask the same thing for European movies. We need more European movies and localized European movies. In Spain, we need more Spanish movies in theaters. This was the big problem in the Spanish market. And we need more of real European market-oriented movies that have some possibilities to have a large audience in Europe. And I think that we need to think now as a European market and not as an additional market from France plus Italy plus Spain plus. We need to think about a 400 or 500 million market to be able to compete in this new world. And after the same thing around this discussion is today we very quickly come into the conversation, the platforms. Medium movies will go to the platform. Will they come back to the theaters? Platforms are not a solution. It's they're taking advantage of right now of a situation which is very that will end. All of this will come to an end, and pretty soon, in fact. But platforms are not a solution for all movies, or not a solution for diversity, or not a solution for creativity. Platforms are just the extent of what we know, each of us on our markets, which are big pay TV that has become globalized. A globalized pay TV is not the solution to diversity and to creativity of the cinema. I believe we defend around this panel. So we will need to find other solution, and we need to project ourselves in this new world. But this new world is not that much different than the old one. It's just that all of this accelerated many things that were at work before this. For example, globalization, the need of a European market, language. What language do we share? We're having a European panel in English. Many things could change in the future.
A lot has been said, we have been trying to build that European audience market that you are mentioning for years and years, since Europe has been created, and I'm not sure we succeeded. What we learned, however, from the platforms is that a local show, very local, in local language, can be successful outside, and even in other countries. How do we transform that for film? Because, Omar Sy, the Lupin, is a major success in the US. Why do we need platforms to discover that? And how can we transform that for our films? Who wants to answer? It's a difficult question.
Very quickly, yes. Just on Lupin, because it's great. Because it's the example that we can do European, worldwide blockbusters. It's Paris, it's Omar Sy. We know how to make those movies.
So do you know that it's a problem of a distributor in Italy not believing in the success of the possibility, not knowing how to realize it?
Absolutely not. It's that big movies in Europe or big local movies. The expectation for in Italy or in France is to make the biggest comedy of the year in our local territory. But no, we lack ambition of doing European blockbusters. No one is producing this. We're doing the search and development for American studios. We work and spend a lot of money on our talents, from school teaching them how to make movies and funding all of their first movies to present it in our festivals to make them to have them notoriety that brings them to Hollywood to do the blockbusters. We've been doing this since the beginning of cinema, and especially since World War II. Why don't we have? We have the money. We are a lot. We have a very big market. And I come from Art House, but I think we need to have a European construction by having the ability to do European blockbusters.
Andrea, do you want to react, and then Sarah?
Yes, I agree. I agree with what Nathanaël says. I mean, our mind is set. I mean, I like people of the industry is set to be successful in our own little territory. I mean, we think, as he says, many producers think of being successful with, in Italy, in France, or in Spain, with a comedy or whatever. But we think less of films that can make it globally, not being a European success, but a global success. While the Americans have always thought to have, they have a big market, obviously, that's the main difference, but they always made films to be globally successful worldwide. So I don't mean that by that we should stop making small films, art house films, or film festivals films. We should continue to do that, obviously, because that's part of our richness, of our expression, cultural expression, local expression. But in the same time, we should do entertaining films that have potential to be successful everywhere. We should do that more definitely. Otherwise, and what I think is interesting of platforms that somehow have also made accessible series not in English in America. I mean, we have seen that before, any subtitle film in America had a very limited distribution. Now we see that there are series that can be a huge success in the US or in the rest of the world and are subtitled. Obviously, with platforms, sometimes you have a chance to also have it dubbed. But I think that wall is broken. I think people is more open and more curious to accept the films or series that are not only English speaking.
So will you take the risk as distributors to invest heavily to a French comedy or a Spanish comedy? Because that's the same.
No, sorry, not comedy. For example, when you start with comedy, we're still, it cannot work. And first, we need to change the mindset. We have a bigger market than the US. We have to think like this. We have a local market that is bigger than the US. So we have to start by the beginning. Can we address 500 million people when we start a production? And it's not taking risks as distributor. It's also taking risks as producers and offering new scripts and giving new voice and giving development time to authors to give them this hope to think global, to think Europe, to think different, and to think a universal language. And we have this in Europe. And if you think Europe and you find it in the subject we're treating, we have a solution into this. We have the richness just here. We just have to take it.
So I must disagree. That's always good in a panel to disagree, yes. Because we have been trying to do that for the past 20 years and looking into all European subjects, which are the war, which are, horrible subject because it's difficult. We are separated nation, and what I know from the platform, what I've learned from the platform is when they are looking into a project, they are looking first at the potential on their local market.
Sorry, but you're
and to be very local, and that's
you're
local.
asking Americans to judge your European potential. No,
I'm taking lessons out of something successful. You know.
Why are all the World War II movies, big worldwide success, are made by Americans? That's not true. We can find tons of examples that are European worldwide success, etc. So I don't think we've tried and we haven't achieved this. It's a new world. We have to think a lot of things: quotas, chronology, platforms, European financing.
It's a new world.
Many things. Okay, there are a lot of constraints to achieve this, but we can if we think European.
On this, I agree, and I'm with you. Sarah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I agree with Andrea and Nathanaël as well, and in the view that we have the opportunity right now, probably more than ever, and the crisis is going to push that even quicker than we maybe thought it could be, is to create a European cinema exchanges of films, circulation of films in a better way than we've ever done. And I'm thinking, I was thinking when you were talking about a film that we worked on called Woman at War a few years ago by Benedict Erlingsen. It's an Icelandic director, produced by a French, and it's a European co-production. And the film was sold to many territories, did very well in lots of European countries, was worked by various distributors with great attention. And I think this kind of films that could probably, there could be more of them, and we have the distributors we're part of a Europa distribution, Jour de Fête, and there are over 100 distributors, European distributors, really keen on working together to make European film exist the best way possible. I think we have the resources on the distribution side. We have the exhibitors that are ready to take risk on European films, and it's the great opportunity we have now to promote more than ever the European cinema, definitely. And with the various films, as Andrea was saying, I think each type of films should be released in a different way. You have bigger production that needs striking marketing investment and huge releases, but other more independent, more smaller films need more targeted, audience-driven strategy for distribution. And maybe we should think of the chronology for some of these films. But I think there are some great opportunities right now, yeah, definitely.
Andrea, do you want to react on the question is that the opportunity for European films is more on the production side? Do we need to change the way we produce, or do we need to change the way we distribute?
Listen, I think that, I mean, my feeling is that what's happening right now is that many producers, I mean, many people does more things. I mean, we, for instance, like MKD, we start as an art house distribution, then we open up to, more commercial films. Then we started to produce, now we're producing series. And we're producing series for Netflix, for Amazon, or for Sky. And I think this experience is interesting because we confront with other realities, with a global vision, with we face with problems that we were not facing before. And I think this can allow us in the future to think differently when we produce a film and have a different vision. I think that there is an evolution in the industry because basically who does television does films, I mean, very often are the same company. And we use screenwriters that come from cinema, directors that come from cinema, so from movies. So it's It's just we are applying, you know, our skill to a series, and then we can, once we have learned more and we have made this experience of producing series that have to have a global audience, I think we can use that experience also to do films and have a different approach. I think it's an interesting time. You know, it's obviously things are changing very rapidly, but it's interesting what's happening. There is a lot of movement. There is a lot of you see, we adapt very, very fastly. Obviously, you know, the sector that is suffering more is the exhibition. You know, we are also exhibitors, and we know that is the biggest challenge. But also that has to, and we knew that already. I mean, you know, and MKD is one of the best example in Europe of renewing theaters and doing great complex that are interesting, appealing, and not just the dusty cinema that was there in the 70s. So we need to have great contents, but we need also to have great location. The location has to be appealing as well.
Definitely.
So we know that there is that challenge, and we know also that the cinema itself, the movie theater has to have very flexible as well, has to have more offer, different offer, not simply, and it's already happening, not simply cinema, but all the other extras, contents that are now distributed in the theaters. So I think in general there is a lot of dynamism. I think there is we should be very smart in adapting and take advantage of the situation.
Nathanaël, you want to react?
Yeah, I fully agree. And if we to take another example, it's this series that have worldwide success in foreign language, in different subject extra, reminds us one thing on why we do cinema. It's we are an offer business. We're a prototype industry. We have to take risk and creative risk. And this is why we're doing cinema. Otherwise, we just have to go and do TV, and that's perfect for it. But we've all tried, and you say all producers have tried for the last 20 years. I'm not sure. We have a lot of standardization and expectation that has been lost in European cinema also in the last 20 years. I think it's coming back, and it has started to come back a few years ago, but we need to also have a creative renewal. I think it's coming. I think all this exchange between platforms, globalization, theaters, etc. are coming, and I think we need to reveal a new way of thinking and the mindset of directors, screenwriters, etc. And it's the same thing for all the industry. We need to find new ways of distributing, more use of social media, expanding our markets, and same thing for theaters. We need to renew the experience. Cinema history is just made of those change every 20 years. From silent to talking movies, from black and white to color, from palace cinema to multiplex, and every time it's a 20-year cycle in content, so this renewal, our industry is used to it. We're just embracing a new one, and I think we really need to focus on looking forward. This pandemic is coming to an end. It will come to an end this year. It's hard for everyone. It's harder for many other sectors than ours. It will come back because we know people have the appetite to come back and to live, and that's why theaters are going to have a long life in front of them. It's because we need to share, and as Chaplin told 100 years ago, laugh and cry together. But there are changes, and we'll manage to get through it.
Okay, you mentioned changes needed in few fields, in windowing, in support, in production, and in distribution, the way you are distributing films. You are on 3 distributors. What should you change? What should be changed in order to achieve what you are mentioning, which is a dream again for me? How can we gather European public around a national film with a European taste? if I'm translating correctly what you are mentioning. Sarah?
Well, I think there is a lot to think about between distributors of various countries on the way we can promote together a European production. So all the exchanges we can have within our associations, organizations are very important, both for the production and then afterwards. I think the discussion between producers and distributors is really important, especially right now. And then we really have to do more than ever tailor-made distribution strategies for the cinemas. I think when the crisis is over, when the cinemas reopen, there will be a huge appetite for exchanges in the cinemas, for meeting each other, for doing Q&As around the films, and I think the distributors should be ready to prepare that together with the cinemas. Yeah, so that's some of the ways I foresee the future. And of course, we should emphasize our efforts on the new generation to make sure that they are not thinking only about, because that's one of the big risks of the crisis, is that the habits everywhere, everyone have changed, and there is this habit to, of course, be in this watching series or watching films on the platforms is partly a big danger for us, and we have to drive back the new generation to very well-designed locations, cinemas that are attractive, appealing to them too.
Having this new generation coming back to theaters is a challenge in each country. Andrea, do you want to comment on what Sarah said, and in particular on more collaboration between distributors at European level on a release of a film? Do you want to react on that?
Listen, unfortunately, every market is different, and the strategy for, especially the timing for distributing a film, mostly is decided, from the local competition that you have. If you have a festival, or if you have, but local competition that you have is the main factor. And every country is different from that point of view. So yeah, collaboration absolutely, in terms of how you especially sales company have a role to kind of guide and give guidelines and give tools to local distributors to how to market a film, what can be the strategy. We see, there are different reality. There are some reality that are very helpful on that and give you a lot of tools or suggestions to do your work at the best. But I think what in general distributors should do is not treat the films alike. Every film is different. Every strategy. We should make the effort to think a different strategy and be creative in that aspect, and go and catch and look for the audience where you cannot even imagine where they are. Because sometimes I think the main point is to bring people that normally don't go to the movies for a film. So, but maybe there's an angle on that film that will interest them, and you should do something, whatever, to bring them to see it.
Yes, expanding the audience was mentioned a few minutes ago in this panel, and as well as using social media means that can be pan-European. And my belief as a producer is that the distributors have been lazy by using these new ways of releasing films, of promoting films. I was discussing with again a Netflix guy who told me that the only very efficient way to release a film, to promote it, was the social media. The print and advertising in the metro was just a vernis, was just something useless, but just to be seen. But the real power is there. And it should not be used only by the distributors, but also by the theaters to catch their audience. Do you have a strategy in that field, Nathanaël?
Two things. I don't think it's the laziness of distributors.
No.
It's mostly.
I'm provocative.
It's mostly the expectations of distributors and directors, of the producers and directors. If you don't get them their prints on the Champs-Élysées, they're very disappointed and tell you that you haven't done your work. So I think on this part, it's a mixed responsibility. After, yes, I agree. Most of the drive to theaters through social media, but not just social media, through communication strategy, is central today. But it's life for all of our business. What we can see also in many territories and in this field is that a lot of exhibitors forgot to do their work for a long time. They just take movies, put them, get another movies, and forget to work and create their community and address their audience and create this. So there has been a laziness on the theatrical side for years also. I think it's also it's changing.
It's changing a lot. I think a lot of independent exhibitors are now really driven.
I think we have a global problem.
Yes.
The problem is the first European exhibitor is American. It's Chinese. The second one is Mexican. Etc. So yes, we have in Europe the big chance of having great local exhibitors that are doing the work, but also we have a need for the big multiplex chain to reinvent themselves, not only in this premiumization of the world, saying we're going to give you food in front of a screen, it's a restaurant business with a screen, but to be exhibitors. And on this we have to work. And when we're speaking about young people in theaters, the problem is not for them to come. It's for me, we have to say what is the real problem. The real problem is the price. How can you justify in premiumization in the multiplex all over the world that one seat is more expensive than a streaming monthly subscription? And after, I'll finish on this, is I think we need to also forget about being in competition with the platforms. Platforms are a competition for TV, a competition for internet, a competition for the big screen. Our competition, which is not a competition, we're in the same field, is the people that makes you go out and share things. It's restaurants, theaters, museums. We're in this field. So having a constant opposition to Netflix, saying, are they changing the habit? Okay, Uber Eats and Deliveroo are not going to make all the restaurants close. It's a new way of doing business. It's an additional business extra. But the competition for Netflix is TF1, M6, Rai, and the other ones. It's not the cinema. So, and I think we really need, in all of our discussion, to forget a little bit about this, because it's not competitors, it's something that has always existed, and we have to focus on the good things and not about our people are changing. We need to change first our own business and look at our own problems.
I agree 100%. Do you want to react on the price? Because I have a feeling that the price is very high in theaters, and it's very high because of US films.
No, it's not very high. Sorry, but on this, it's the cheapest way to go out. For years, and the increase of the ticket price has been lower than inflation in all Europe. So it's not expensive. The price point of a normal ticket regular look high, but going to cinema is not high.
Let me get back. I was going in the wrong direction. I was going in the wrong direction. Our economy has one particularity, which is we have projects that we are producing with budget that can range from 100,000 to 100 million, and they are sold out at the same price. And there is the producers are not deciding what is the price of selling the product. And that's something, that is very bizarre. It
hasn't been always like this. 20 or 30 years ago, a longer movie was sold on a higher price. You say it's a producer problem, but on exhibition side, now all movies make more than 2 hours. It's one run per day less. We don't have the negotiation with producers saying, okay, it won't be 50%, it will be 60% because we have owners. So I'm not sure it's the heart of the problem. For young people, for sure, when you lower the price for younger people, they come back.
They come back, yeah.
Absolutely.
And the more you have
elasticity too for younger people.
And also the way you can also get some fidelity, like subscription. Lots of independent cinemas are having their own card or monthly card offer and that's a good way also, I think, to attract the young audiences, definitely.
But that's not the young people that buy.
Oh, really?
I'll give you an experience that we have at LK2. Unless 26 years old, it's €4.90 during the week. From our multiplex too, and we generalized it on all our theaters last year. The increase, for example, at MK2 Bibliothèque, 60% of the audience, and it's number 3 cinema in France, is under 26. And they come from 1 hour round the cinema. The market share of younger under 26 in all of our cinema, and including art house cinema, raised by 10 points when we lowered this price. So there is a direct connection between price and young people audience. You cannot have student all over Europe that have a few euros every month for a living and for their leisure time, and say the price point of a cinema is €10. That doesn't work. Doesn't mean it's expensive. So parking your car is more expensive than going to the cinema. So it's not an expensive leisure, but you have problems with pouvoir d'achat for the young people in Europe today. That's the reality.
Yes, that's what I call the price elasticity, the fact that the demand is responding highly to an effect. We have been all lazy, it seems, that's the lesson of today, when we look at ourselves as a producer, as a distributor, and as an exhibitor. Do you feel that you're lazy, Andrea? And
that wasn't addressed to us.
How are we going not to be lazy in order to...
I don't think we are lazy, no.
To shape our future?
I didn't get it very well. The question if I'm not lazy, I'm from lazy. No, I don't think so. But what was? How do I see? How do I?
My point is that some operators, and especially the
exhibitors,
big ones, exhibitors, but also big producers or big distributors, especially foreign ones in Europe, have been also very lazy in their thinking about our industry and not doing the work, and the rethinking of our future has to go through working and not just waiting for it to come.
And working together.
Yeah, in that sense, yes, in that sense, it's true. As we said before, I mean, everybody sometimes is concentrated in his little kind of place and in little space in little country, and to be successful there, there's not a bigger view. There's not a global view. And today, I think that's the point. We have to open up our mind and see that the market are, Europe or the world. And I think that's really what we have to do, change that set of mind. I mean, obviously you should not forget your local market, but you should really have a more open view about it. And I think coming back to what we said before, we should really be also more open-minded about everything. As you said, I don't see that the platform are the competitors of the theaters. I think we have to see that our allied. Never like now people has watched movies, series, whatever. People, we have also a good effect from platform. We have younger people that are kind of getting accustomed to more interesting filmmaking through Netflix, and then they come and they discover a different kind of world and come to the movies theaters. So I think there should be an interchange on that level. As I said before, Windowing is very important. We should be very flexible on that. We should be very flexible on that. And if we do that, we really probably can cooperate more also with platforms. I tell you, my experience in Italy, we're much more flexible. We were, especially with foreign films, in terms of windows. We distributed in our theaters films like Roma, Irishman, and other films from Netflix. We have had audience that we had never seen before. We've seen audience with those films that normally we wouldn't come to our theaters. So why lose it? Why not get the chance, if there is that chance, to cooperate with them? But this means to really be open-minded, and we know that there are like some exhibitors that how do you say, Jour pur, that no, that's evil. That's the evil. Never. We will not touch it. And we know has damaged the industry because it doesn't correspond to reality. Because if I see a movie, if I want to see a movie in the theater, and after 2 weekends it's no more there, I cannot wait months after I find it somewhere else because I forget about it.
There are some words, you're mentioning the fact to be open-minded. There are some words that you have threat to be pronounced, which is media chronology change in France, for instance. That it's a big issue. And that's cool that we are in Les Arcs at the European Festival, so we can speak about it. Otherwise, it's a very complicated subject here. We need to put an end to our discussion. If I can sum up what we said, I think we need more dialogue between producers and distributors and exhibitors in order to face that. But also taking advantage of the success of the platforms and how we can work with them. Also on the distribution side, I think it's super important what you said. They are a partner in the future, and we need to work with them as well as a partner to promote our films or to, as we do with the exhibitors. And that be, we are super open-minded at the EPC. I don't want to promote my own organization, but that's the way we are. And we'll be very happy to welcome discussions on that subject if you are happy to continue discussions. So thank you for your very enlightening thoughts today. I see a future for European films and an opportunity that I was looking for at the beginning of this discussion, and I thank you for this. And I would like to thank also Les Arcs, and I can't wait to do a slope and to come back to the Alps, but we will have to wait for 1 more year. Thank you, and have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Nathanaël.
Thank you.